Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first Entrepreneurship to the Point session for 2022. I'm your host this evening, Sean Tennyson. I will be doing the welcoming, and it's already the 24th of February, 2022, and it's such a bumper start to the year. This evening, we have a great panel lined up for you. We're going to be speaking around how to triumph over adversity. We've got some great testimonials from entrepreneurs, and please do share with us your story as well. So in the chat box below, use the chat function, do an introduction to who you are and where you're dialing in from, and be part of the conversation this evening. Entrepreneurship to the Point is here, and it's been here for the past 10 years, providing you with information to inform, equip, and inspire you as entrepreneurs. And as always, our tagline is, we need to get to the point around things pertaining to entrepreneurs. So this evening, we'll be chatting to really great entrepreneurs in the space that have been able to overcome some difficult challenges, whether that was COVID, the lockdown period, the unrest within South Africa, and their businesses have been able to thrive. But also this evening, we'll be introducing you to one of our new facilitators on the platform. Fazlin Tofi has joined the team, and she is our head of marketing, and she will be facilitating the discussion this evening. Fazlin would describe herself as a bit of a failed entrepreneur. She's been there, done what other entrepreneurs have done, and have been able to take the lessons learned out of it, but also have been actively involved in taking those lessons where she's failed and helping other entrepreneurs. She has worked extensively in the entrepreneurship development support space, within the marketing space, both locally in South Africa as well as internationally. And she will really be taking us through some of these conversations that we need to have. Good evening, everyone. I see we have Tegan van Blerk in the chat. We have another panelist that's just greeting everyone. So please do use the chat facility, guys, to be able to introduce yourself. We're also live on YouTube. So if you are not able to sign into Zoom, please go to our YouTube channel at Entrepreneurship to the Point for you to be able to log in and share in the conversation this evening. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Fazlin to do a bit of an introduction and really give us just an overview of this evening session, and also for you to get to meet some of the entrepreneurs and their stories. But once again, like I said, we want to hear from you as well. So use the chat facility to be able to share with us. So Faz, over to you and welcome to the team.
Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you for the warm welcome. Somebody said the other day on LinkedIn, welcome home. And it does feel like I'm home. So thank you for the warm welcome to the team and to the organization and to the session tonight. Thank you, Sean. Everybody, hello, and hello, Polisi from KZN. I saw your little note. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thank you for bringing yourselves to this conversation today. We are hoping for it to be a relatable conversation, one where you are equipped. So our hashtag today is equip. One where you walk away from this feeling both inspired, but also, how do I do what these guys have done? So I will introduce our panelists in just a little while to you and why we thought they were great to talk about this conversation about triumphing over adversity. But before that, I want to hear from all of you, please. So we are very active on social media and we want to engage with you all the time. We are available on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube as Entrepreneurship to the Point, and then on Twitter we are available as E to the Point. And this, as Sean said, will be streamed live on YouTube, the session today. So please ask your questions, and we would like to engage with you all. As Sean said, I am a failed entrepreneur, and it's something I say with the biggest smile on my face, because every time I failed better. But what it also did was teach me that resilience is one of my best qualities. I even have resilience written in Chinese on my hand, on my arm, because it's what entrepreneurs need to be able to get through these tough times. And I was reminded of a word called zeitgeist recently. And it's defined as the defining spirit of a time. And no time can ever say that it is as uncertain as the pandemic period was. So the zeitgeist for 2019, 2021, 22 is uncertainty. But today we want to share with you some tools, mechanisms, inspiration, in terms of how in difficult times, some people step up above that. And in a time like the pandemic, some people have excelled. And we want to share that with you tonight. So we've got on the panel tonight, I'm going to quickly introduce them and then ask each of them to just share with us who they are, what the entrepreneurial story is, and why they are in this conversation with us today. What made them successful? What made them resilient? So I'm going to start by introducing Adrian Stevens. Adrian is from Environmental, which I think is such a brilliant name. Mental about the environment, mental about green solutions, etc. Adrian, hi.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Very well, thanks, and thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Adrian, quickly tell us who you are so we have a background on what makes you mental for the environment. Tell us who you are, your quick entrepreneurial story, and then maybe touch on things like your successes in COVID. So for example, when people are hemorrhaging jobs, your business is creating 14 jobs. And we all know that one job reaches 7 up to 12 other people and livelihoods are impacted positively by just that one job. So tell us about yourself, but also kind of where you found yourself in the COVID period in such a way that you could create these jobs.
Thank you. First of all, my name is Adrian Stevens. I'm originally from Alvarado Park. Entrepreneurship, as far as I'm concerned, is ingrained within my DNA. I've always known that one day I'll be my own boss. Started at a very, very young age, where what is known as build and build. Until obviously I started my first job, started selling clothing, started selling consumables and so forth. And at the age of 32, after gaining a valuable experience in the banking industry, and also after working for Rent-A-Care, I decided it was time for me now to break away and to start my own business. My business is a pest control, hygiene, and daily cleaning business. We do specialized cleaning of consumables as well. And what was my first thoughts about this impact for COVID? Initially, it was a feeling of devastation, loss of business, vision that obviously looked like it was going up in flames. And fortunately, because of that entrepreneurial spirit, the positivity, as a business owner, we needed to project positivity under very difficult circumstances. We needed to obviously live by example. The fighting spirit kicked in. We had to strategize. We had to persevere. And we had to obviously find new opportunities to create business and expand our service offering. And that's when the COVID services was introduced. The likes of deep cleaning, fogging, supplying of PPE and consumables, the supplying of sanitizers, dispensers, thermostats, etc. And that's basically how we overcame the challenge that we were faced with that initially looked so devastating. We've now turned it into opportunity, And we were able to not only sustain, but we were able to grow as well. And all that obviously thanks to a very, very strong and committed management team made up of my finance team, my HR, my payroll, operations, internal sales, recruitment, and the heart of the business, the service people. If it wasn't for them, obviously things could have gone very, very differently. Some of the initial actions that I remember taking during COVID, obviously expanding was number one on the list. We as a business created new brochures, we updated our websites, we made contact with our existing suppliers, existing clients. We also distributed obviously to new businesses. And that's when it all started to happen, because now our clients could see that we were equipped and we could offer the type of the service. What worked well for us during this period is the teamwork and the effort. That was electrifying. I must be honest. Every single department united, they worked relentlessly to ensure compliance and functionality. If I can name individuals, our HR pertaining to compliance, lockdown restrictions, and training, payroll and HR. Compliance in terms of there's requirements and the processes. Health and safety, they had to formulate new policies, implement training, formulate new procedures, because we're living in a new world called COVID. Operation teams stood out for me, I would say, above all the rest. Because in the midst of all this chaos and all the uncertainty, and also pertaining to government regarding the lockdown restrictions, essential services versus non-essential services, we were faced with a very difficult situation in that operations teams had to physically deliver work permits to our staff. In some instances, the work permits, if it was on their phones, worked. In other instances, it didn't. And we found ourselves logistically running around from between Joburg, Bloemfontein to Kimberley, up until Polokwane, to physically deliver it at the places of, where our employees stayed. Purely because they couldn't move around unless they had these permits. So yes, definitely operations stood out. Procurement did extremely well in terms of sourcing new material, equipment, machinery, and PPE and so forth.
Can I just ask you a quick question about that, Adrian? So we all struggling in a time where we all affected by lockdown. And you now affected by lockdown, plus you're affected because you've got these mouths that need to be fed in terms of your own people, but then your staff. What in you is then activated to be able to get in your car in lockdown 5 and go and drive to Bloemfontein, you give, for example? What drives you as the entrepreneur, as the head of this household, the head of this business, to then motivate yourself to hand out those permits, for example? How did you find that strength in yourself?
As captain of the ship, there was never any option. We needed to make sure that our guys complied. We needed to make sure that they had the confidence and that they obviously complied in terms of the new regulations. And it was just a matter of getting the work done. And everyone saw the need, everyone understood the need, and everyone followed suit. And that's the magic that brought.
So I hear this as saying, when you have a strong leader and your vision is always clear and consistent, So you're not green environmental today and then purple environmental tomorrow. You are consistent. Your team then buys into you, buys into your vision, and then follows suit, as you say. When you say, guys, we need to get this job done, the job is getting done. What's your tagline again, Adrian, for your business?
If we say yes, consider it done.
Absolutely. So you don't just say it, you don't just talk about it, you be about it, which is what I like about this conversation we're having today. I want to just jump in and ask Tebogo. Tebogo is from GTS, which is a security company. And Tebogo has come to us. We're going to come back to you, Adrian. We will start a conversation again in a little while. But Tebogo, I wanted you to please introduce yourself. Please, will you unmute yourself and show yourself? So I'm excited by the fact that someone fell into this job. Somebody identified you because of your physique, hired you as a security guard, and then you went, hey, this is not all I need to do in my life. I want more. Tell me who you are. What inspired this chutzpah? I can't think of an English word for chutzpah. There's another word that Savannah uses, but we won't use that word. What inspired this chutzpah that has somebody starting a business that started as a fluke job and then succeeds in the time of COVID? So introduce us to your business, but tell us why are you successful? What makes you so special?
Okay, fantastic. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Tebogo Lincoln Mohale. I was born in Johannesburg. I grew up in Alexandra Township. And just a little bit about myself and my history with the business, how we actually started off. I was working in the fitness industry. I was introducing the fitness industry post 2010. And during the World Cup era, there was a lot of foreign delegates coming into the country. There was a lot of celebrities. And, just by default, I had a gentleman who actually spotted me, and he was short-staffed. So he then asked me to just actually intervene and if I could assist him in just actually sitting in for one of his staff members. And that's where my first exposure of the security business came. However, I was in a phase of my life where, I was looking for more to do. I just felt like there was more to me than actually just working in the fitness industry. There was more to me than, just being stagnant in what I was doing. I was getting a bit frustrated, which I think is very common with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially if you're in a working environment and you just want to break into something new or find your own niche or find your fit. So when that happened, I was exposed in 2010 to the whole security industry. It actually took me about 2 years to fully establish my business. So there was a lot of procrastination in between, which is common also with a lot of entrepreneurs. None of us want to leave our security income to go and just step into a lot of uncertainty. So 2012, I just took that leap of faith, guys. And truth be told, what I don't mention a lot about the drive that took me towards my career was how it was actually triggered by a motorbike accident that I had. I had a very tragic motorbike accident in 2011 going into 2012. And I remember sitting for 3 months. I was literally, demobilized for 3 months. I couldn't do anything. And now the fitness industry, you're required to be there physically to make money. And I sat there and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I had exhausted all my savings. I exhausted my parents' savings. I'd moved back home. I'd lost my motorbike, which was my only source of transport at that time. 3 months into it, I was fired up, guys. I was fired up. But one thing I would like about this topic when you talk about resilience is that you have to prep yourself, for a lot of things that you're going to do ahead and understand what's going to happen ahead before you get into it. So I prepped myself understanding that there will be a lot of times where I'll feel like giving up or procrastinating. And I told myself that, you know what, I'll face those times. I prepped myself in times where I knew that there will be times where I'll be running dry and pretty much working on an empty stomach. And I was so ready for that. So it came at the right time for me to actually being an entrepreneur. I stepped in a market that's very competitive. And it is not easy for an entrepreneur into South African markets. It's very harsh actually. So just to fast forward the whole procedure with the pandemic, guys. I think I want to mention a lot about this because a lot of us have gone through a lot of a phase in our lives with the pandemic where we've lost a lot of things. We've lost a lot of assets. Some of us has lost families, not only assets, and it's quite a sad time for a lot of people. And it touches very close to my heart. But what I can actually say to a common entrepreneur or a new starting up business is that, guys, when you step in a business, it's the pandemic, the commonality between a pandemic and a business is the uncertainty. So there's two things that are very, very, they run syncly when it comes to the pandemic and the business. And you have to step into the business running with the mind of uncertainty, but always trying to find it. Never walked in with an understanding of my industry, but I was willing to learn. And there was a lot of uncertainty during that time. But I worked on a phase and a quote that I always go on, which was written by the famous President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, which goes as, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend my first 4 hours sharpening my axe. And what that meant to me was that it meant a lot of readiness. I needed to build my business to be ready for a market. So I got to a point where I knew that I had nurtured this business and I was ready to tap into a market. And whether it was, it was me drawing a new IP for my operations team, a new IP for my marketing strategy, a new IP for my sales strategy, a new IP for my finances, everything, I designed it from start to scratch with the help of people that have been there. These were people that walked with me. They became mentors. Some became very close friends. And that literally, it expanded my way of thinking, because you can't do this alone. So it's one thing I would like to really actually encourage entrepreneurs, that it doesn't take away from you anything to actually ask the next person that, how do I do it? And how do I'm a bit stuck here. Can you give guidance? You find people are willing and able. Right now, I'm guiding a lot of kids that coming from unprivileged schools. Just this Monday, we're actually doing a donation of about 200 sanitary pads at a local school in Alexandra. So these are the kind of initiatives that I'm getting myself involved in. But entrepreneurship is not always about just making the money. It's got a lot to do with also building your character and understanding a lot about yourself. There were times I failed, guys, and I sat in meetings and I did not even have the business language. I couldn't articulate myself in the business. And I would hit my head, and I'm like, why did I say that? I remember sitting in front of an investor, and this was someone who knew me personally. And this person, without any complex paperwork, he said, Tebogo, I want to give you $500,000. And I sat there, really, I was like, whoa, I'm going to have $500,000 in my bank account. And he asked me a simple question, guys. And I think that this is, it's an innocent mistake from an innocent entrepreneur who's coming learning business. He asked me, when can I get my ROI? I looked at him and I was like, what is that? And when I sat there, I felt so stupid when I got to understand what an ROI is, because it was a simple term in a business transaction. So eventually, obviously, because he didn't trust that I was equipped enough, that deal didn't fall through. But it's simple things like that where you kind of pick up that you learn, you grow, you learn, you fall, you learn, you go. And with me, what drove me was perseverance. It was dedication. It was hard work. You need to understand what is pushing you. You need to understand what is motivating you before you get anywhere. And then when you are in that pool, guys, we are all going through the same. It's a very, very, very lonely journey. So we're all going through the same thing. I have entrepreneurs that come through to my office and we sit down and I say, guys, let's have a cup of coffee. What are you going through? And from a guy who grew up in a 1-bedroom kitchen house, and I used to sleep on the floor, to where I am now. This is where I count my blessings as being successful. Success, guys, you need to celebrate yourself with every little milestone. For me, it wasn't about bringing in the biggest cars and living the lavish life. It was about adding value into my life and adding value to the people around me. So when that started happening, it started changing a lot of how I look at entrepreneurship, and it started motivating me more because I started noticing people that were around me were actually benefiting by default into an industry that I walked in by default, and I actually excelled in it by default because of my charisma and the kind of attitude I looked at it and the kind of motivation I moved into.
Tebogo, if I can just step in there and say, I don't think you're succeeding by default. I think you're succeeding because you are able to call yourself to identify when you don't know something, be honest and real about it, but then go back and learn it. What does ROI mean? And now I can respond to that in my next conversation. And for me, that's when I always say, I revel in failure. I love that moment when I am dumb, when I am so lost that I don't even know what to type into Google because I don't even understand. And it's the journey of answering that question that says, we are here on purpose. We are doing this on purpose. And that's what I hear from your success is, yes, you fell into this role by default, if you want to call it that, by fluke of luck, but you continued on this journey on purpose. And I think that's a really nice segue for us to introduce Nokwazi Mzobe, because Nokwazi is an author, a lecturer and facilitator of entrepreneurs, and has engaged with the entrepreneurial mindset, entrepreneurial attributes. Excuse me. In my past life, no, let's not call it that, I have engaged with Nokwazi across many years, and I've seen how the work that she does with entrepreneurs gets them lighting up, gets them seeing themselves in a different way. So Nokwazi, with that kind of introduction, I want to ask you, please introduce yourself to us. Tell us who you are, but tell us, you've heard Adrian's story, and tell us. You've heard Adrian and Tebogo's stories. You've heard that in times of real strife, they have succeeded. What are those attributes that you've come to realize entrepreneurs have that make them succeed? When FinFine's research says 60% of SMEs had to close their doors in level 5, these entrepreneurs didn't close their doors. FinFine says that during the 5 months of lockdown, 60% of full-time jobs were lost. These entrepreneurs were bringing in headcount into their businesses. What attributes are you identifying with or that these entrepreneurs are portraying? But before that, introduce us to you and tell us who you are.
Baslin, thank you very much. And thank you so much to you and your team for inviting me to be here. My name is Nokwazi Mzobe. I hail from the beautiful province of KZN, although I am firmly a Johannesburger now. I'm in what I call the knowledge creator industry. I'm in the knowledge industry. And what do I mean by that? Is that, well, my service is really around facilitating knowledge and sharing knowledge. And you know, what Fazlin said to Tebogo now as they were wrapping up, with regards to purpose, for me, that was my purpose. When I started, similar to Deboho, I stumbled into the space that I was in. I was in a business school environment. I had just taken an opportunity to, take a break from my career because I had been in corporate for 8 years. And I was supporting small businesses purely as a volunteer. And what happened is then one of the entrepreneurs that I was mentoring and coaching said to me, do you do this as a business? And at the time I was like, no, I'm planning to go back to my job. I'm just on sabbatical. But more and more people started asking me, do I do this as a business? And that they would be willing to pay me for my services. So that's how I started and became an entrepreneur, became self-employed, and within the knowledge space, which is coaching, facilitating and advising entrepreneurs. And that's what I did for 8 years. But in those 8 years, I got the opportunity to work with hundreds of entrepreneurs. And within that, as I listened to what Adrian and Deboho were talking about, and the key takeouts that I can take from their stories, I'd say the first thing is that they have purpose and they seem to have a passion about the space that they're in. And I think that's important because I always say that when times are tough, you've got to want to be in the space that you're in. You've got to want to be and enjoy the space that you're in. So I think the first thing, we always hear people talk about purpose, but I've seen that during hard times, your purpose is kind of that compass that keeps you going, that keeps you focused. The other thing that really stood out for me with regards to what Adrian was saying was regards to the foundation. Having the right systems and processes in place. I really also, acknowledge and the fact that he spoke about his HR team, his operations. He spoke about having cash flow. And that foundation is so important because the reality is we do live in volatile times and volatility is going to continue to happen. So small things like having more than 6 months cash flow is really important. Having the right team is important. But more importantly, you touched on it, Fazlin, where you said it's also about the leader. So having a leader that the team can trust, but not just the team, also the customers. And so for me, that really stood out in what Adrian was saying. Also with regards to what Deboho was saying, I mean, for me, it's he kept on saying default, but Deboho, you saw an opportunity and you stepped into it and then you made the best and you continuously educated yourself. And that's another trait that successful entrepreneurs have. Both what Adrian and Deboho kind of touched on is that entrepreneurs are continuous learners and they humble and they learn from others and they surround themselves with other people who have better knowledge than them in certain areas so that they can be empowered. So Fazlin, I really think that, as an entrepreneur, I always say have the tribe. And the tribe that's not going to be, oh my gosh, you're so successful, you're doing so well, right? You want to have people who are able to tell you the truth, who are able to see your blind spots, but also are able to advise you and pull you forward. And even one step further, people are willing to open doors for you. But people are willing to do that if you display that. If you display passion, if you display pride in what you do. And for me, that is what has come across with Deboho and with Adrian. The other thing has to do with how you view risk. A lot of people tend to say that entrepreneurs are risk takers. I believe that entrepreneurs are risk mitigators. So what do I mean by that? They see the risk and then they say, if X had to happen, what would I do over here? If Y had to happen, what would I do? And so by having a risk mitigation mindset, you aren't scared by what could go wrong, right? Because you have some sort of backup plan, or you've thought about it so that you can pivot and you can, manage whatever that needs to be managed when these things happen, when the risks pop up. Because I think he said it very well, is that right now, volatility and risk is going to continue to happen. And I think good entrepreneurs are able to, I won't say thrive in that, but they're able to kind of deal with that, to kind of see it for what it is, maybe take a pause if they need to take a pause, relook, re-strategize, and then find a way to move forward. So for me, those would be my takeouts with regards to attributes.
Oh, that's beautiful, Nokwazi. Thank you. You've synthesized so nicely what both of our entrepreneurs have portrayed in their telling of their own story, but also your experience with entrepreneurs on the whole. I have a quick question, and it's based on my own I revel in failure. I'm a failed entrepreneur, but I go home at night and sometimes it's hard, Sometimes I cry myself to sleep because failure is an ugly word. How then do you help motivate? And I've got my own answer for this. But how do you help motivate people who are stuck in the, I am my business? So if my business is failing, I am a failure, not I am failing or the action I've taken was not successful, is I am a failure. And in times like these, people are struggling emotionally. Let's not even mention financially. What advice could you give us? If you had a kind of wand, what resource would you give to entrepreneurs? And please, Teboho and Adrian, I'm going to ask you the same question. If you had a wand, what resource would you give to yourself or to entrepreneurs you come across that will help them be strong within their own motivation and purpose, in their self-actualization and realization that they are here for a reason and living out a existence that was meant to be? What's that thing that helps, that you think could help people self-motivate, especially in times of struggle? I think it was Adrian who said, sharpen your saw. And I added to that, even when you're not needing to cut the wood, make sure the saw is sharp, just in case you need to cut that wood. So Nokwazi, maybe to you, what, if you had a wand, would be that one thing that helped entrepreneurs understand that that's what they need to self-actualize themselves? If that makes sense.
So it does 100%. So I'm going to start by answering in two ways. The first thing, Fazlin, is what we sometimes do as entrepreneurs. And it makes sense because we invest so much in these businesses and they become our lives. But the first thing I say is that have an identity outside of your business, and that your business doesn't define you, so that when the business fails, you don't see yourself as the failure, but the business that failed because of whatever factors that happened. So for me, I would say that would be a starting point. But the magic wand, if there was a magic wand, is about personal mastery and personal development. I really do feel that a lot of the times, especially let's say in the coaching space with entrepreneurs, we tend to focus more on the business, but there's not enough focus on the person. So understanding yourself is so key. Understanding what triggers you, understanding what motivates you, and then putting the support system around you of people who are able to kind of capture and carry you in the low times. And so for me, I believe that we should start talking about things like therapy, because I know that as an entrepreneur, mental health is a thing, because you're not just responsible for this business, you're responsible for other people's lives and their salaries and their families. So who's supporting you from a mental health perspective? Then the other part is about getting life coaching. So, and this is linked to the personal mastery and knowing yourself and being self-aware. And really, you know, about 2 weeks ago in the business school that I do some work with, one thing that they pointed out is that one of the top skills of the future that we need to be developing leaders in is around personal development and personal mastery. And so for me, I would say that that would be the magic wand of continuously developing ourselves and improving our personal mastery and personal awareness. So that's my answer.
Beautiful. Thanks, Nokwazi. We're talking about Equip today, and it feels like you're giving us these nuggets that we can write down with an arrow next to it. So for me, arrow is action point. And so these nuggets are arrowed, action pointed. Tomorrow when I wake up, this is what I'm going to do. And so from Nokwazi, I'm hearing personal mastery, understanding yourself. There are a few really good free tools. So there's a viainstitute.com, where you can get a sense of who you are as a person, as a leader, what triggers you, as Nokwazi said. And then that also helps, if you did it as a team, helps you understand who your team is and where those strengths exist. I like to play in spaces where we talk about strengths rather than weaknesses. So we relying on each other's strengths, and where I may not be as strong as you are, you bring in your strength to kind of counteract my area where I'm not as strong. Thanks, Nokwazi. Adrian, you spoke very, very articulately about your team and how you led that team in these difficult times. But what I like about that is that you are calling people out and celebrating people for the role that they play in your business's success. And very often we say, the entrepreneur has purpose, the entrepreneur has passion, but you need to identify in your team that passion and that and keep that passion boiling. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
if I was to ask you the same question I asked Nokwazi, if you had a wand, how would you replicate your success? What advice would you give to people? How would you inspire and equip those listening today to follow suit, to do what you are doing so exceptionally well?
Okay, first of all, it's important to realize that not everyone will be an entrepreneur. And some people will end up working for people, and other people will be entrepreneurs. And an entrepreneur obviously has certain traits that either he's born with, or for argument's sake, he can acquire. And most important advice to any aspiring entrepreneurs is you need to find yourself. You need to find your purpose. You need to know your strengths. You need to know your weaknesses. And equally as important, you need to know your limitations. Surround yourself with experts. Surround yourself with people, and Nokwazi's mentioned that earlier on, that knows more than you. Because it doesn't help a business person being naive or thinking that I've been there, I've done that. No one can tell me because simply I'm the expert. Doesn't work like that. Also, very important advice, which many smaller businesses tend to fail on, and that is compliance. Compliance is key. And if I refer to compliance, I refer to your mandatory requirements such as SARS, your UIFs, your annual reportings, and all the rest, and obviously your HR. It's important to have a strong HR so that your team is motivated, your team is guided based on the principles and based on the rules and regulations of the business. It's important that everyone understands and knows that. And then I've got a saying, and I tend to live by the saying, you need to work harder on yourself than you do on your business. Because as an entrepreneur, you need to constantly develop yourself. You need to constantly, because let's face it, we know our weaknesses, we know our strengths. And it's important for us to improve on those weaknesses as often as we can. I, for one, try and do at least one course every year. Whether it be, the last course I did was just forgot what the course is, but I'll get back to it now. Emotional intelligence, because as a business person, we get caught up in emotional situations on a daily basis, and we need to have the skill on how to deal with these situations and not to personalize. And basically, we need to be resilient, because no matter what the situation might be, negative, positive, we're living in a different world now where, you know, everything's changed. And if it wasn't for that resilience, then, you know, most of us wouldn't have been here. So these are core requirements for an entrepreneur. And my advice is always follow your passion. Do something that you are passionate about. Don't, you know, it's always more difficult going to do something that you have no idea about, or that you're going to require extensive training or extensive guidance on. Follow your passion. And if you base your business based on your passion, it makes it so much easier for you to succeed. It makes it so much easier for you to be able to be successful. And I'd like to leave it at that.
Thank you, Adrian. You brought up something really important, and you reinforced what Nokwazi said about personal mastery. And so on that point, we've got a poll running at the moment where we're asking you to, whether as an entrepreneur, you are spending time or money or both on personal mastery. And maybe it's just to kind of sow that seed with you. If you're not, why not? If you are, what's it doing for you? What are you learning from it? What are those takeaways that you could use to implement that next thing? Thank you, Adrian. So I want to, in the interest of time, go over to Tebogo, and maybe Tebogo, if I can ask you the question a little differently. So you don't have a wand. How would you deal with COVID now? If COVID comes around, please, no, don't hear me say this. Please, COVID, please, don't hear me say this. But COVID comes around a second time. And this time you are still not prepared for it. I don't know if it was you or Adrian who spoke about kind of just having you spoke about it, having your stuff in place, having the systems in place. Adrian now just spoke about compliance, and compliance is really making sure that the baseline is solid, so that COVID comes around again, you're still not prepared. But what lessons would you like to equip our listeners with today to know that they can handle this? Don't let first step be, oh, greatness, I need to close shop because I don't know what. This uncertainty has got me scared. How would you handle that? And what advice and insights would you offer to equip the people listening today and later on YouTube?
Okay. I think I just want to start off, Fazlin, by just mentioning how fortunate we were because we were an essential during COVID, right? Yeah. However, in this whole conversation, I want to speak to someone who is not an essential, to mentioning that, you know, there's a lot of companies during even COVID times where they were still, you know, running their marketing campaigns, still reaching out to companies such as myself, you know, to sell whatever product that they have. So the consistency was there. You have to understand, guys, that yes, COVID slowed down things, but it did not end the, you know, what it takes to being a human being and your day-to-day operations as a human being. So that's simply what I'm trying to say, that simply means that every service, any manufacturer or service, everyone is necessary, right? It just unfortunately slowed down other sectors in the business era. So my thing to entrepreneurs I'd like to give out there is that, guys, there's one of two things with COVID, as I mentioned earlier, that just like in business, you are sitting in an uncertain environment where you are looking out to reach and sell a service that you want to sell to your customers. It shouldn't be a situation where COVID now becomes an example, because it does so happen even in business that you go through phases where the business takes a downturn. I took a very hard downturn before COVID struck. We were fortunate to triple our revenue during COVID, and that was amazing for us. However, as I mentioned about readiness as well, it was very important for me as well that readiness had to happen. And if you don't mind me just touching on this, Fazlin, because both of my colleagues there, Nokwazi and Adrian, touched on the issue about self-mastering. One of the things I did personally, because therapy, Nokwazi mentioned therapy, which is a good tool to have, but therapy could come in so many ways. And one of the tools that I used personally was, just being physically active. It keeps your mind refreshed, it keeps your mind running. And physically refreshed doesn't mean that you have to go and pay a gym membership, because trust you me, guys, I've gone through phases where I've run dry and I couldn't even afford a 200 Rand gym membership. It gets that real, right? So you need to start finding hobbies that get you to meditate and rejuvenate and restart again. Now that I'm in a better position, to do a lot of personal mastering, I had a discussion with a few of my colleagues where we were brushing off ideas. How do we invest back into our bodies? Because most of us, we go on overdrive, you end up being fatigued, you end up burning out, but you find yourself in a situation where you don't know if you're coming or you're going, because you are literally burnt out. And I explained to one of my colleagues or friends, and I said to her that, you need to find a way where you need to take time off for an hour so that you can, focus on yourself. And by focusing on yourself, guys, sometimes it doesn't mean that, you get your hair done or you go for a beer and all of those kind of things. Personally, what I did was that I made sure that every month, I make sure that at least I go through a whole, massage therapy. And why? Because my body is literally on the forefront of everything. It's in the front line, and I'm using my body to get to clients, to move around, and I'm using my mind. So all of these things need to play a role. And it's about doing the little things in consistency that gets you to your final destination. Because if you live off of, I will do things when I get money, right? You will not succeed, guys. You're gonna get to a point where you get so frustrated because the money's not coming in, and you want to do certain things for yourself, but you cannot do it. So it's not about the money in this case. When you're still a young entrepreneur, finding things, you need to find a way. How do I design ways of living around my situation before I can get into, a Steve Jobs position? And think that big, guys. Think that big, because I'm sitting here and I think I can go even further, or even into Africa with my business. So that's the thing, is that those small, consistent routines that you have, or those habits that you have, are going to eventually get you to a certain point in your career. But if you don't have that routine installed in you, you're going to have a big problem, because you're going to shut down. Your body will shut down, your mind will shut down, you'll get frustrated. Everyone that's negative around you will overwhelm you with the negativity, because you don't have that mental capacity to fight off the negative talk and actually move into that direction. I don't know if I'm answering you there, Fazlin.
Absolutely, absolutely. And motivating. You should, your tagline should be GTS Security. We motivate entrepreneurs. Thank you.
I'll change it soon.
Thank you, Tebogo.
Fantastic.
In the interest of time, we've got 5 minutes left. I think my colleague Kujo posed a question. I think we answered the question, Kujo, in our conversation. Tell us if you are satisfied with the answer. The question was, knowing the stats around failure of entrepreneurs in South Africa, what can entrepreneurs do if they want to face their fears of screwing up and pushing beyond that to success? So I think our three panelists spoke really eloquently and personally about those challenges. Just quickly, I want to ask Nokwazi, having worked and done the extensive work you have done, are doing, what do you see as the forecast for this new normal? What is the forecast for how entrepreneurs will need to, Tebogo said it, still be human? Adrian alluded to it, be a leader, a purpose-driven leader. What for you is the forecast? And I mean, I know you've pivoted your business. You've needed to, before failure, stop dead and go, I don't want to fail. Let me pivot. So I want to get a sense from you, having worked across so many different sectors, industries, people. What do you think this new normal looks like? And what do we do to kind of take that bull by the horns and ride it?
You know, so I think our new normal is that it's going to continuously be volatile. I think COVID has just shown us, but I also think potential world war with Ukraine and Russia, right? So things are going to consistently happen to us. And so I think, as you said, now in terms of how can we be more human, I think that's where we start, is that it's starting to say, I'm human first. And with the things I do, how do I take care of myself? So Tebogo put it really well in terms of care for my health, my mental health, my physical health, right? And it starts with being more human, just with yourself and with people around you. And then also, I also say it's less about starting to looking at your customers as transactional. It's about saying, how can I make their lives better? And having that human mindset. And especially as we are rapidly moving to the 5th industrial revolution, not even the 4th, because we're already in the 4th, and where we will be living with robots as colleagues. And so that is where our human skills, as you were saying, authenticity is the new currency, vulnerability is the new currency, and those human features. But now to pivot to the other side is that it's going to be so important for entrepreneurs to also understand their business models. So Tebogo said something about being able to pivot when you were non-essential. And there is a business that I know who was in eventing. And you know that eventing business is pretty much where we stand still. And what they did during COVID, they sat and said, what are we good at? And they're just like, we're good at making food. And then they said, what is the opportunity right now? So we're not catering for weddings and events anymore. What can we cater for? And then they said funerals. And then what they said, so how can we change our business model from what we used to do on site and be able to service this market? And so they totally pivoted. They set up an industrial kitchen, they started making food over there, and then they serviced a funeral industry, and literally they would send food in containers and in cans, ready-made, drop off, looking at all COVID protocols and stepping out. So this is a business that used to service weddings and live events. And so for me, you as entrepreneurs, first it's going to be so key, for example, and Adrian and Tebogo, it's not just to say, I'm in security, or I am in, cleaning and sanitizing and hygiene. It's what other core skill do I have within my business? And how can I take that core skill and use it to pivot? So as you were saying with me, Fazlin, the first 8 years of my career was only focusing on entrepreneurs, such a small market. But during COVID, things changed, less workshops, less face-to-face, but I realized that the skill that I have can service the business environment. And so I started servicing more business schools and moving more to entrepreneurs and management practice. And so that's my thing as well, is that understand your business model, your partners, and look at new markets. And you don't have to necessarily start a brand new business. It's about saying, what core skills do I already have? And can I position that core skill to service a new market? And that for me speaks to the future world of work, about being agile, about being flexible, about being moving quickly, about leveraging technology. And that's really what it's about.
Beautiful, Nokwazi. I like how you always just synthesize so well. Thank you. Guys, we are at 7 o'clock at the end of our session tonight. If there's one burning question, please, you can drop it in the chat box. I'll respond to it quickly. And I also want to just share with you something exciting that we are working on at Property Point, which is something called Future Table. And it's a platform for sustainability focused entrepreneurs, so those in the green space or working toward becoming green economy entrepreneurs. And it's really a concept where we bring corporates to the Future Table to engage with these entrepreneurs around a value proposition that they think is saleable, is attractive, and we then help those entrepreneurs refine their value proposition so that they can become funder ready. And at the end of, so what happens is every quarter, these entrepreneurs present their business plan to us, value proposition. They are then given feedback, they go back and refine that, and they come back and present this new refined business. There's a financial reward at the end of that, and really a kind of media following that we will initiate around this entrepreneur so that South Africa can learn from these lessons. So it's called Future Table. We'll advertise it on our social media platforms and on our website. And just to remind you what that is again, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Entrepreneurship to the Point. And on Twitter, we are E to the Point. Our website is ettp.co.za. And this podcast or conversation will be made available on YouTube. Please keep it alive. Keep the conversation alive. Keep the resilience alive, guys. We are never ready. Never ready. But the more we sharpening our swords so that we have a sharp sword when we need it is what will keep us going. So that's it from me. I don't see any questions. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Keegan. That's it from me, guys. Keep the resilience muscle strong. Keep that entrepreneurial flair going and keep in contact with us. Let us know what's challenging you. What's the next conversation you want to hear from us? And then sign up and attend it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to our esteemed speakers, Adrian, Tebogo, Nokwazi. You guys have been amazing. Thank you for sharing so generously of your time. And to the technical team in the background, awesome stuff. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.